thank you for supporting the music that we know is genuinely majestic music. The music of kings that we presented tonight with honor and with no disrespect.
Now hold on to your hats, cause we're about to embark on one of the hardest parts of the entire game. Hold on to your big, tall, yellow, Curious George hats. Cause the next 20 minutes, and part of the next episode, is gonna be the longest stretch in the whole damn game between two healing points. No healing except what we've got carried on our backs. Our sweaty, pimply, nasty backs. And of course they're gonna make it extra hard for us too. They're gonna introduce a bunch of new and powerful enemies. They're not just gonna give us G-Scorpies the whole way. This is what separates the men from the 90-pound, limp-wristed, pencil-necked Redditors. So here's the first of the new enemies. We got a Manticore. You know, back in my GameSpot days, they used to have all these little nicknames for all the different fandoms out there. If you were a Nintendo fan, you were a sheep. If you were a Sony fan, you were a cow. If you were an Xbox fan, you were a lemming. And of course that raises the question of, what if you had multiple systems, Well, you would be a Manticore, of course. You would be an animal made up of many different parts. That was just what people called each other on GameSpot back then. Nowadays, nobody calls anybody anything on GameSpot because everybody's all left. Except for this one guy. There was this one guy on there around 2009-ish who was quote-unquote a power user. His profile picture was like a white cat sticking his tongue out, and he was always starting fights in the comment sections. Anyway, maybe 4 years after I left GameSpot, I came back just to check on things, and that guy was still there, to my surprise. And he was pretty heavily into Trump stuff, too. That was definitely a new development. I guess in some respects it's funny that GameSpotters used to refer to each other as cows, because over in Europe, calling somebody a cow has a very different connotation. I'd like to imagine some elderly British woman just wanted to talk about video games and probably got scared off by all of the people saying, "You fucking cow!" Oh yeah, and I guess that ghoul we fought was a new enemy too. Did you see how his mouth stretches down to such a wide extent? Kinda looks like that Aphex Twin music video where the Voldemort-looking dude, he stretches his mouth down real low and then he screams in the old lady's face and her hair starts blowing around everywhere, like she's standing in front of a big fan. Me and my wide-reaching pop cultural knowledge. Mother of God. So yeah, a lot of these enemies just kind of seem like generic Dungeons and Dragons type enemies. You've got skeletons, big scorpions, what have you. I mean, I guess Dungeons and Dragons was kind of a new thing at around the time this game came out. So there are parallels. And of course, who could forget the Plumbus, the most famous Dungeons and Dragons enemy of all? No wonder all those old church people back in the day thought Dungeons and Dragons was evil. Well, what am I saying that for? The Plumbus wasn't actually in the board game. That wasn't a thing back then. But yeah, the moral panic over D&D definitely was a thing. Well, I mean, I assume it's before my time. Over there, if you saw it before it went away to the right of us, that's the lava pit, by the way. That is gonna be quite tricky to get through because it functions exactly how it does in Dragon Warrior 1. That is to say, for every step you take on it, you lose 2 HP. Sting tried to warn us in the song Every Step You Take, but god damn it, we did not listen. Part of me wonders if it even does anything to do fire spells on these guys, cause they're over water. I don't know if there's like an elemental system to all of this, or is that too elaborate for a game of this era? I guess the fire spells are doing enough damage as it is. I'm kinda worried here cause the mage only has 9 magic left. We still have to finish up the run up to the dungeon itself, and the area after the dungeon. I'd hate to think that he's just gonna be completely useless for 2/3 of this thing. But what can you do? Okay, so he's out of the way. I guess nobody in our party was a Rick and Morty fan and we had to get that Plumbus out of here. Okay, so we are gonna brave the fires of the the horrible lava pit. Do the smart thing here and try to heal up first. Good God, is Odin already down to like 10 HP? We've barely even... Okay, 19, that's what it was. But still, we've barely even gotten started. And our party already looks like a MASH unit. Perhaps I should have brought more items. Use up these burgers. As the Pink Panther says, I would like to buy a hamburger. Okay, here we go. Sometimes the game will play nice and just let you right through the lava pits without also stacking an enemy encounter on top of that, but evidently this is not one of those times. The guy who did the walkthrough had an easy time getting through it, but not us. This game actively wants us dead. This is objectively one of the most dangerous moments in the entire game. He's got a bit of a Neon Genesis Evangelion color scheme going on, doesn't he? At this moment, I feel like I'm some kind of a wildlife tour guide, and you, the audience, is the group taking the tour, and this is the part where the lion jumps out in front of our group, and everybody has to crowd behind me as I brandish a knife at the lion to try and scare it away. It's got that kind of energy to it. There, we pulled through. I had to fast forward a lot of that, otherwise the fight would have been 3.5 minutes long. And of course we weren't getting away that easy, were we? Lord almighty, let's take a roll of the dice here. Okay, thank goodness, we wouldn't have been able to get through that. As my mom says, I just can't deal with you right now. Okay, we'll continue to burn through what little health items we have. We still got a hell of a ways to go and we're already running out. Use up the burgers. Speaking of burgers, were you aware that it's Grimace's birthday? I don't know, that's what everybody else is talking about. I'm just trying to get in on the latest thing. If everybody else wants to celebrate this fictional character, then so shall I. Happy birthday, Grimace. McDonald's is celebrating that instead of Pride Month. You know, there was that Grimace GBA game that they made. Uh-oh, what's this? We're trying to find the robot, and all that's there is just a big pile of scrap metal. Whatever happened to Robot Jones? Oh no. Evidently that's what happened to Robot Jones. What was I saying? So yeah, McDonald's made like a Game Boy Color McDonald's Grimace themed game. And for some reason Ronald McDonald is strangely absent from it. All the other McDonald's mascots are there. They got the bird, they got the Hamburglar, They got Grimace, of course, he's the main character, but no Ronald McDonald. I do kinda wonder if they're trying to phase out that character. Who knows? Really just goes to show where the landscape of gaming is these days, that you can just dump a Game Boy Color ROM on the internet and people will be able to find it and it'll just propagate itself throughout the internet easily enough. And I feel like 10-15 years ago, if they wanted to do a project like that, they would have had it be a Flash game instead of a Game Boy Color ROM. The landscape has changed, perhaps for the better. Okay, on to part 2 out of 3 of this awful no-heal. For God's sakes, I didn't even move. I did not change what tile I was standing on, and this son of a bitch just jumped right out at us. Up until now, I thought you at least had to move for there to be a new encounter, but nope. He'll just run right up to you.
Let me get up and greet you.
So here's some trivia for you. Did you know that at the time of its release, Phantasy Star was the most expensive game ever made? It had the largest production budget of any game up until that point. Sega certainly liked to spend big, because that wasn't the only time Sega put out a game that was the most expensive game ever made. Later on, they would claim that title once again with Shenmue in the year 2000, and then Shenmue lost that title to Halo 2 in 2004, and then Halo 2 lost that title to Oblivion. I guess as technology gets better, the amount of money you can put into a game just gets higher and higher, and it's a constantly moving target, you see. Okay, so I'm trying to be a bit smarter about things, and I do have a map that I'm looking at here, but the map doesn't have an identifiable entrance, so this isn't particularly helpful. Anyway, so the other day, just out of curiosity, I was trying out ChatGPT, and I asked it to write a script for a Let's Play of Phantasy Star, and you're probably thinking, ooh, is this the big reveal where he says that all of the dialogue thus far has actually been made by ChatGPT? But no, actually. Most of the dialogue that it gave me, well, all of it honestly, was completely useless, but the only interesting thing that really came out of it was ChatGPT is surprisingly knowledgeable on Phantasy Star. It knew the locations and the names of the cities. It knew that the main character was named Alice and that the big villain of all of this was named Lassic. Surprisingly knowledgeable on a 30-plus-year-old game. Because this is a very old game after all. The Soviet Union was still a country when it came out. The reason I'm standing here for so long is that when I was getting the gameplay, I was looking at the map on another screen to try and get my bearings, so to speak. Anyway, yeah, the Soviet Union was still a country when this game came out, and then it collapsed about 3 years later, and the incarnation of Russia that followed that might not be around by the time we finish this Let's Play, the way things are going. Politics are for nerds. Anyway, so I was watching Vinesauce Joel the other day, and he found a Scott the Wise video, pardon me, just by accident, and Vinesauce Joel, he just assumed that Scott the Wise was like some 2009 era, like, bad AVGN ripoff, and I found that really funny. Like, you know the type of guy I'm describing, like, oh no, I have to finish this review before my evil twin gets here and steals all of the video games. You know, those guys were all over the place in 2009. All you needed was a living room and maybe a video game or two, and a good attitude, and you didn't even need a capture card. Just point your camera at the TV for the gameplay. Do things the Dark Side Phil way. Ain't it wild that Dark Side Phil got as big as he is when he was just pointing a camera at his TV the whole time? People were willing to watch that shit. I guess if Dark Side Phil can make it, then we all can. You know, there was a re-release of this game on Switch semi-recently. They added some modern quality of life improvements if you're just like a total pussy who can't handle these old school games. They've got a map in the corner of the screen and also a fast forward button. You barely even have to play the game. Oh, look at that, we're right back where we started. We just went in a big damn circle. But anyway, yeah, there was a re-release of this game. I know there was a certain YouTuber who really liked the re-release. I think it was Happy Console Gamer who was the big proponent of that. Hard to find a balance between modernizing the game and putting in quality of life improvements while still trying to preserve the intent of the people who made it originally, you know? Gotta thread that needle. So, did you see in the news that Microsoft was talking about buying out Sega at one point? Because, you know, they've been having those, all that information coming out of the FTC filings with the Activision buyout, and I feel like a lot of the conversations around that's just really dumb, just all of these armchair business people that don't actually know how a buyout like that would work. And they say, oh yeah, I hope they do buy out Sega, because that means they're gonna bring back all of their dormant franchises. And I really just kind of have to hold my tongue and not tell them, no, you fucking idiot, that's not how it works. A company has a set amount of resources and employees, and they have to prioritize things that are going to make money. If they get bought out by a different company, a team of 400 people isn't going to materialize out of thin air and just start working on dead franchises that won't pull in any money. They're not just going to suddenly decide, hey, let's spend $30 million on a new Alex Kidd game. This is a good usage of everybody's time, energy, and money. Let's go for it. Gugh. Some people. Just based on what I've seen, though, I do think the Activision buyout's gonna go through. Sounds like they've got a pretty rock-solid case. And then my gut tells me that they're gonna go for the Embracer Group after that. Okay, we made it out of the dungeon. We are 2/3 of the way to getting to the next place that has healing. We still have one final stretch of the race. So cross your fingers, cross everything you got, cross your fingers, cross the street, do the sign of the cross, maybe even listen to Christopher Cross, and hopefully we'll get there.